Yo, yo. Peace. Rahubat. 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 So I'm not going to spend too much time on here today. And if you're in the chat, I'm not going to look at it too many times because I'm currently about 30 feet away from my phone. So today I want to talk about honor. I haven't been on here in just a little minute because I've been very busy. A lot of things moving, whole lot of things moving. And it's getting to the point of where things that I've been talking about for quite some time are starting to come to fruition. So I'll talk about a little of that and then we'll get into the topic at hand. So, first things first, one thing that's really interesting that I've been doing recently is in my 35th revolution around this sun, off the spur of what seemed like a whim from a dream and instructions I received in the dream, I enrolled back into college. So I'm officially a college student again for the fourth time. I said on some of my songs, dropped out of college 3 times because my professor was capping. Well, I decided to give them niggas another chance. And, it's with good reason. The things that I'm studying will be very beneficial to my business and certain motions and things that we have, going on. And will give me some tools to be able to do things that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do as efficiently, so to speak. So, like for example, okay, first finishing up my general AA because when I left off with taking this seriously, it was 2009 when I graduated from high school. Dating myself here, but I already said I've been around 35 revolutions around the sun almost in a few months. So I don't really care. And y'all, if y'all are listening to this or listening back to the replay, you'll have to excuse me because there's been a lot of weather changes. I'm sure everybody that's in the U.S. caught like that huge wave of frost and stuff like that, and it was like 20 degrees here in Florida. And then it got hot again, like instantly the next day, and then it's been raining, and then it got windy, and then cold again, then hot. So it's a lot of different weather changes. The plants are acting up. There's a lot of pollen and such things that are going crazy. So I'm a little bit stuffy and drainy and stuff like that. So just bear with me. So anyway, when it comes to what I'm doing in school, like I said, at 34, I decided to, just a couple weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to go to college because of that dream that I just had last night, and I'm going to get back in. Now, when I left off before, I had some issues with some professors in the past to where, just for context, like I was an AP scholar with distinction. I took like all honors classes and AP and dual enrollment classes and stuff like that when I was in high school. Very high achiever. I think I was like one of 4 AP scholars with distinction in my graduating class of like 1,000. So like I'm not I never really found academics to be a hard thing. It's just as I started to get older in life, I kind of started straying away from formal academics and going off to study myself. But what I came to realize was that there's a professor that had a vendetta kind of with the way that I was operating in his class because I was taking like 9 classes at the time. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but he didn't like the fact that I was using an older version of the program and I was able to like stomp out his full week of classwork in the span of 3 hours on Sunday night before it was due. and turned it in so spectacularly. So he decided, even though I think I got an A on his exam and I had a B on the course total, he decided to just fail me at the end of the semester and not explain why. He wouldn't explain it to my parents or anything. So for those of you who've been in college, you know that there's certain stipulations for you to continue receiving financial aid and such things. And because of this, it put me in a state of where I was in academic probation, and I ended up losing the ability to get financial aid. So basically, I was told by the college at that time that I couldn't continue unless I paid out of pocket. And back then, you know, being 18, 19 years old, this was kind of devastating because I didn't really have the means to be able to do that, you know. So I tried to find a couple other ways to get in other colleges, and you know, it succeeded for a little bit, but it didn't work out. So, but this particular school, the first one, the college where that professor was at, they basically told me there was absolutely no way I can get back in unless I paid the fee up front. Now, fast forward damn near 15 years later, and I'm having this dream where I'm basically being guided to go back into college. I'm being shown how it's going to work out. Go ahead and re-enroll back. This is the thought that's in my head as I wake out of this dream. And lo and behold, I just decided, okay, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go to the college. Like I literally just did it spur of the moment. It didn't make sense to anybody that was around me. And before I knew it, within the span of a week or so, after tying up some loose threads, I was back in classes. So I'm currently in classes. So I'm finishing my general AA because I had already had like 30 something credits when I graduated. So I'm not that far away. I can literally clear this in like a semester or two. And then I'm gonna transfer it to bachelor's of science in business management, specifically with the specialization in banking and finance. And the reason for this is because I want to get a bit deeper into like contract law. I already know quite a bit about it because I've been studying it over the years, but just having that core foundation, I want it to be basically unfuckwittable to where when I walk into these negotiations and such things for my business, I'm able to swing my weight and not have anybody be able to pull up anything to say otherwise, amongst other things. So anyway, that happened. So let's talk about honor, the topic of discussion here, because I've been pondering on and implementing and kind of keeping focus on this principle of honor basically my entire adult life. I think the first real framework that I got on honor and what honor is and what it means was from a book called Hagakure by I think it was Sunetomo. Basically, he was a monk that had basically lived his life as a samurai. He decided to, you know, retire to the temple and become a monk and go around and teach and stuff like that, which happened very often during those time periods. But this book was basically just a bunch of stories of different samurai from different clans and such things that would get together and they would discuss like things that were going on in their culture at the time. So it would describe certain things as, you know, this particular samurai retainer, he failed to protect his, his, I don't want to say master, but the lord that he was serving, so to speak. And, you know, he commits seppuku or something like that. Now, that's pretty fucking extreme. And it would even get to the degree of, like, there's this one story in the Hagakure where there was a samurai lord who owned a certain castle estate, and he had a retainer there, and they were in the middle of the courtyard in the center of their estate, and the retainer, the samurai, was washing his feet, right? And this is apparently a story that was passed along from a bunch of different places because I guess there were some witnesses and such things. But basically, there was an assailant was able to break into the manor, and they killed that samurai lord while he was getting his feet washed. And his retainer's whole purpose was to be there to protect him. So this is, as legend has it, this is what's written in this scroll. It said, as the retainer's head, or as the Lord's head was falling off, he drew his sword, cut off his retainer's head, and they both fell into the wash basin. And then the samurai lord, his head floated, and the retainer who failed to protect him is sunk. Now, that's wild to hear that and imagine that. I remember being like 17 or 18 and reading that. I'm like, holy fucking shit. But you hear and see these kind of stories, and anyone who's maybe unfortunately experienced certain events like that, you kind of hear and see it all the time. When someone's will is very, very, very potent in adhering to what they're about and what they say they're going to do, these people, it like literally persists through death, right? You see it in anime and shit all the time. If you ever watch the movie Juice, starring Tupac and Omar Epps, you'll see that there was the scene where Bishop shot Raheem. He shot their homeboy, the leader of the group. And, you know, as they all scatter off, Bishop comes back to try and get the money from Raheem's body. And after laying there for several minutes, when he goes to grab it, Bishop, being Tupac in this particular cast in this particular film, he goes to grab the money from Raheem, and Raheem grabs him. It's what they call dead man's grip. He grabbed him. He's looking at him in the eyes, like a very scary fucking face. And a lot of people pass over this scene because they just focus on like how Bishop was the one who, you know, he had the juice and he's doing all this gangster shit and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, he was like, you can look at it. Like if you study that scene, he was fucking terrified because he had just shot Raheem. And this dude was clearly dead. And then he just reached up and grabbed him, and no one was around to see. So he had to run off. Like he literally like scampered away. There's a lot of different depictions of this. All right, so we're getting a little bit dark here. So what is honor? Honor, very simply, is having the propensity and taking the actions to follow through on what you say you're going to do. That's honor in its simplest form. Now, you could take a step beyond this and say, okay, when it comes to maybe even things that you don't say you're going to do, but it's the right thing to do, you step forward to do that anyway. And you do it silently, right? You don't make a whole lot of fuss about it. If the people want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. But that's what honor is at its core. Now, you'll find that, and I'm not going to call anybody out by name specifically, but, you know, I'm sure you can probably think of some examples in various different arenas where this happens. You'll find that there's people who, you know, let's say they have millions and millions of dollars and they decide to start some sort of like charitable foundation, or they're feeding the hungry or something like that. And they're doing it, and it's good work, and it's going to people who really need it. But on the same token, they're out there with the selfie camera and, oh, we're out here, we're feeding all the hungry people, and, you know, we're doing God's work and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you see us. Yeah, we donate X amount of millions of dollars to feed the hungry in this impoverished country. We're the greatest, right? That's not honor when you're operating that way. It strips away the purity of the actual act itself. That's virtue signaling. And in some cases, that can get as bad as what we call grifting, right? So those two things aren't the same thing. Those aren't to be conflated to be the same. So what's important, and something that I talk to with my team all the time, that I work with, is that the things that you set out to do and you intend to do, and I make sure, well, I'll get to that in a second. The things that you set out to do and you intend to do, you do it regardless, by any means. Doesn't matter how much time has elapsed. It doesn't matter if you didn't meet your original time frame for it. It doesn't matter if you're, you failed at it first, and people are upset with you because you said you were gonna do it. No, just fucking do it anyway. Even if you don't think they need it anymore, follow through with your word, right? And this is something that I hold very strongly to when I say I'm going to do something. Because oftentimes, because I take on so many different things and I wear so many hats, it's difficult for me to keep on the timetables that I set. And that's just me being honest. And, maybe I can when I'm setting these specific expectations of me doing these things, maybe it's a matter of like, I'm comparing it by the standards of how fast I would operate before I had children. Just that in itself changes things dramatically. Those of y'all out there that are parents, you can't really follow through all the time on the obligations you set to your friends and such things, or etc. And that's something that I'm working on. Just being completely honest. That's part of that honor, right? And that kind of brings to mind, like, there's a parallel word that has the same root of honor, and that word is honesty, right? They both start with that HON. Honesty being telling the truth, right? Now, one thing that's interesting about the truth is the truth is immutable. Truth is truth. It always is what it is. It just is. So let's say you set a certain obligation. You say you're going to do a certain thing. You set an expectation to someone, whether it's a loved one, whether it's, your children, whether it's a client that you work with, whether it's your boss, whatever your position is, whatever the situation is. You say you are going to do this thing by this time. And let's say you don't follow through on it properly. Okay, well, what's brilliant about it is, as long as we're living, right, we have the opportunity to right those wrongs, right? And this is something that was highlighted to me recently when I was listening to a teaching by Dr. Malachi Z. York. That's one of the graces that God grants us, giving us the opportunity to fix the things that we didn't do right, correct, set the record straight, so to speak. So you can always try again later. You can always make sure that you, I don't want to even say try in this case. You can always take another opportunity to take a stab at it and get it done and hand it to them. Even if it was like let's say, for example, it's a paid arrangement. You're doing a job for a client, right? You got a little gig, or it's a recurring thing or whatever, and you say that you're going to do a certain thing, and you don't do it in that time frame, so they don't really super need it as much as they did when you first made the agreement. Maybe they got somebody else to do it, or they did it themselves. Okay, well, if you want to stay in honor, it might behoove you to just do that thing anyway, even if it's a week later, and just give it to them. Just give it to them for free. Here, I said I was going to do this. I wanted to follow through on my word, just in case it could be useful to you in the future. Boom. It's that simple. And now, when you zoom out, you look at the scoreboard, you have operated in honor. You've told the truth when you first made that agreement, right? So it's very important, very important. So Yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to talk about. On the music tip, well, first of all, if you tuned into this, if you tuned in on the replay or whatever, make sure you like the video, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. The Mileage album and film are coming out very, very soon. I was just doing some of the final touches on some of the songs, turning kind of their raw form into bangers. And I think I'm done with the mixing process, and I'm basically just mastering the tracks to level everything out. So that's almost done. I also have the next album. I don't know if I've talked about this, but the next album is probably about 2/3 done after Mileage, and that one is called Nigger in the Woodpile. Very fun name. We'll get into that another time. But that was gonna be super fun. I'm going a completely different route sonically and kind of musically than I usually would with my albums. But it's something that's been with me for a minute. So if you want to know the basis of that name, Nigger in the Woodpile. Nigger in the Woodpile is the phrase that was used in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, when someone would say, basically it evolved into the phrase elephant in the room. So something that stands out that everybody is trying to ignore. Something to that effect, right? That's literally what they used to call it until, it became politically incorrect to do so, and then they changed it to elephant in the room. So yeah, I'm bringing that back. I'm the nigger in the woodpile. So yeah, there's that, and yeah, I got some tracks on that I'll be sharing with y'all in shorts and stuff like that here on Instagram, etc. And also, I have an EP that I've been working on as well. I'm not sure where this is going to fit into the release schedule. I don't know if it's going to come, after Mileage in between the two or after both of the albums or what. I just know it's happening. And this was called Disillusioned EP. And I'm going to be speaking on some things that, and some things that I've been disillusioned from as I cross into my, you know, crossed into my 30s and getting into the point where I'm almost at that mid 30 mark. And, just kind of speak to things that people may fall for if they're vulnerable in certain ways with such things. And they decide that after really looking at something, it's not what they think it is. And they decide to fall back from it, right? That's kind of the basis of being disillusioned. Sometimes it can hurt, you know. Sometimes if you have somebody that you're holding up as a hero and you find out this nigga ain't no hero at all, sometimes that shit can really hurt. It fucks with your whole perception. You're like, damn, I got fooled by this nigga. Sometimes you could be disillusioned by a circumstance or by a system, right? I think everybody experienced that in 2020. They thought that certain people had the best interest for them when they were telling everyone to, put on this mask and stay 6 feet away, and then it goes airborne, but it doesn't. It also stays on tile, but if you use Lysol to wipe it off, it'll kill it. And then all the Lysol bottles started changing their labels to say that it kills 99.9% of this thing that just appeared into reality. And then they're like, oh, never mind, it's another one. Oh, you got to get this. Never mind, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, a lot of people who went through and experienced that, they got very disillusioned with that whole process, with those who were pushing that when they saw the curtain get pulled back and they see what's really going on behind that. And they see it was all bullshit. So that's going to be a interesting EP. I think that'll just be my third EP. I've done, at this point, like 9 or 10 albums. But I've only done, I think, 2 EPs. I did Dojo, which was the first one. No, 3. Draconic, and then Dojo, when I first was getting started out in like 2019. And then God Soul EP in 2024. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. action-packed project, a lot of messages in it. But with that, yeah, that's coming out. You can go to samuraiblackmusic.com. We're gonna have some new merch dropping on there, so you can purchase the Soul Rising album or any of the music on there. Pay whatever you want for a full album or a song. You can pay $1, you can pay $1,000. It's up to you. If you want to support the work, I am currently in a dispute with one of my distributors, and they've removed my music from several music streaming services such as Spotify. However, yeah, Spotify and YouTube actually. However, one, some of my stuff is still up because I didn't distribute everything through them, but there's a significant portion, like I would say like 80% of my music is removed from these places. And two, places like Apple Music and stuff like that. Apple doesn't really play those kind of games, so it is still available there. And of course, you can get anything that you want to listen to on the website samuraiblackmusic.com or shoot me a message. I've had people message me saying that they were looking for certain songs and stuff like that, and I just send it to them, and maybe just shoot them the Cash App if they want to go ahead and donate. If not, no big deal, they get the music. All right, so yep, that's that. I'm gonna go have some tea and clear my sinuses. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, and wish everyone a great week. Hadu Shashug, that's divine love. Wadu. Peace.